Okay, so chapter 12, quick question 3. We're on page 84. A lot of information in this about, mostly about alternative theories to the resurrection, because it can't be that he actually rose from the dead, because atheists believe that can't happen. So, what is the hallucination theory? Yeah.
All eyewitnesses simultaneously have hallucinated.
Yeah. When it wasn't, all eyewitnesses, maybe not simultaneously, the 500 simultaneously had the exact same hallucination at the exact same time. But each appearance, and there are many of them, of Christ, to each person was an hallucination. So they believed they had seen Jesus alive, but they just had this common hallucination. Why is that not a good alternative theory to the resurrection? Yeah, Grace.
You can't explain the empty tomb.
They can't explain the empty tomb. Where's the body, right? Yeah, what else? Yeah, hallucinations are exclusively an individual experience. You don't share the same hallucination. And to have 500 people have the same hallucination at the same time is particularly problematic. And to have everyone over different parts of Israel at different times have the same hallucination, again, that just can't be. And then you add to that it wasn't just that they saw Jesus; they talked to Jesus. They ate with Jesus. They walked with Jesus. And then finally, where was the body? As Grace said, it doesn't solve the problem of the empty tomb. If it was just an hallucination, then the authorities could have produced the body to prove that it was just an hallucination. What is the wrong tomb theory? Grace?
Since the disciples went to the wrong tomb and they assumed Jesus.
Right. So the disciples went to the wrong tomb, a tomb that didn't have anybody in it, and they assumed that Jesus had risen from the dead. Why is that not viable? Yes.
If it was the wrong tomb,
Right. Even if Mary and the ladies got it wrong, even if John and Peter got it wrong, even if everybody got it wrong, the officials sent guards to guard the tomb. Of course they knew where the right tomb was. And they would have just said, here's the body, if that was the case. And then it doesn't explain the appearances of Jesus, right? The wrong tomb doesn't explain, okay, so they went to the wrong tomb, but then he shows up. How do you explain that? And then there's also this idea that the empty tomb didn't convince the disciples until they actually saw it. The empty tomb is not what convinced them. Now, it says, I think, except perhaps John, because it says that Peter and John looked at the tomb and they believed, but it's uncertain what they believed. Some scholars think they believed that Mary was telling the truth, that the tomb was empty, that that's what they believed. And it's unlikely, most scholars would say it's unlikely that they believed Jesus rose from the dead, because they didn't know he was going to rise from the dead, right? So,
That's not an assumption.
right, exactly. It's not. And Mary's, we know what Mary's first assumption was, because when she's talking to Jesus, when she thought she was talking to the gardener, she said, they've taken his body, just tell me where they've taken him. So they didn't, even though Jesus told them and tried to warn them. I mean, you've probably had this situation too. Maybe happened to you, or happened maybe when you're babysitting and you warn a child about something, or you warn and they just don't listen. They don't get it until afterward. And you know what I've learned as a mother? I told you so is just not a very satisfying thing to say. Of course they told you so. Anyway, number 5. What is the swoon theory? And so, what is the swoon theory? Right, he either fainted or he was just really badly injured, but not dead. Why, Davis, then, is that not a good
Had to survive.
Yeah, he was near death when he got to the cross, right? There's zero, no historical records of a crucifixion uh, victim being not dying, and they were making sure they were dead, right? They were breaking their legs to have them die faster, and they made sure he was dead by piercing his side, which went through his heart and lungs, and that's been proven by actual medical doctors. In 10th grade, I think, I read to you last year. Actually, we were in, sorry to bring that up, remote learning, and so I had you read it. But in your book, there was this medical doctor who did a whole study on that, and there are many medical doctors that have. So, and then how did he somehow revive with no medical intervention? They say that the cool, damp tomb did that. Well, that's not. And then how did he get the 70 pounds of spices and wrapping and then walk out of the tomb and open the door from the inside where there was nothing to grab it, right? Because it was on the outside. And get past the guards, yeah. So it doesn't make much sense. But it does kind of give you an idea of how entrenched people are in not believing, right? That they would rather believe that, which is ludicrous, than to believe that Jesus actually rose from the dead. It's kind of like, I don't know, again, babysitting. And you've done this, and I did it. Like, you lie to your parents, and you get so entrenched in that lie, and it's so obvious that you're lying, right? And you get caught in it, and you get it, but at least when I was a teenager, maybe I was more hard-headed than most, but, nope, not giving in, not giving in, not giving in. Your parents are going, so yeah, and not that that's a lie, it's just, when people believe that they're lying. They just believe in something that makes no sense. What is the stolen body theory? Pretty self-explanatory, right? Somebody stole the body, Jesus' body. Now, usually they say that the disciples stole the body, but other people have been positive. We'll talk about that later this week as stealing the body and why that doesn't make sense. And so, what's wrong with that theory? Yes.
Whoever was trying to say.
Right. Well, where were the soldiers? Right. And what if they say, well, they were all asleep? How'd they know somebody stole the body if they were asleep? Right. It's gone, but that's an assumption, right? There was no, if they were all asleep, which isn't even possible because for a number of reasons. But they couldn't have said, well, somebody stole the body because they didn't witness somebody stealing the body if they were all asleep. And these were elite guards, well trained, and under penalty of death if they fell asleep or if they left their post, which they ended up doing, right? So it doesn't make any sense. Number 7. What is the substitute crucifixion victim theory? Yes, Teresa.
It claims that Jesus wasn't crucified by someone like Jesus was killed in his place.
Yeah, Judas or a twin or someone who looked like Jesus, but not Jesus. Which really means probably that they had to find a victim from the beginning. Like, how do you, he was under guard the entire time, from the time he was arrested. So how do you get a victim? And who's going to sign up for that, right? To go through what Jesus went through. So someone else died on the cross. What's wrong with that theory? Yes.
All his family and friends were there, so they would have seen that.
Right. Well, not all of his family and friends, but his mother and some of the women that knew his mother's aunt possibly was there. Salome may have been his aunt, and John was there, and plenty of people who maybe weren't really close to him, but knew who he was and could identify him. But on top of that, this is a theory that developed much later. Wasn't a theory in the first century. It developed later, and everybody was mistaken. Like nobody realized this wasn't Jesus. That just doesn't make sense. And still doesn't answer the problem of the empty tomb, right? Okay, so but there was nobody in that tomb, so that doesn't answer that. What is the invented story theory? Right, they made it up to fulfill prophecy or to try to get a religion started or something like that. So it was, and so what this theory is saying is that that the story led to faith. This fake story led to faith, but it wasn't, or they had faith and so they made up this story. But it wasn't faith that led to a false resurrection. It was a real resurrection that led to faith. If you read the Gospels, the disciples sound like bumbling idiots. They don't get it. They don't understand. And their complete surprise at Jesus' resurrection kind of shows that, right? And so it was that real resurrection that caused them to become mighty men and willing to die for their faith. Before that time, before the resurrection, they weren't. I mean, just at his arrest, they scattered, right? What is the copied pagan myths theory? Yeah, like that scholar that's not a believer, unless he's playing the devil's advocate, in the video that said there are these other dying, resurrecting stories in the ancient world. And so why is that not true? Grace?
It's not written like a myth, and there's outside sources that also back this.
Yeah, it's not written like a myth. They use real names, real people, right? It's matter of fact. It's journalistic style, even though there wasn't such a style for fiction. That for fiction, journalistic style wasn't part of fiction in that day. And the first real parallel, first real close parallel, comes in AD 150, which means that the disciples didn't copy a fake story. Those people who wrote that story copied the Gospels. And then Jesus, I think, as you mentioned, Grace, was a historical figure. Those other myths were not historical, mythical figures. And again, it can't explain the empty tomb. Where's the body? Okay. That is the end of that. So now you are going to read, I'll write this up on the board. You're going to read pages 316 to 324, and you're going to answer the engaged questions 2 through 5. You have the rest of the hour to work on this. If you don't finish it, please complete it before home. You have a quiz over this chapter on Friday. You will have time tomorrow to study for that. Not the whole hour, but you'll have some time.